Okay, so first I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Kim Adamski. I'm the HIV prevention specialist at the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective. We are located at 1841 Broad Street in Hartford, Connecticut. That is in the South End, right near Trinity. We provide sexual health services like STI and HIV testing. We provide cervical and anal paps, breast exams, sexual health exams. We also have a dental program. We have educational programming like today. And we have a variety of like social groups. Right now, our biggest one is Empowerment, which is a group for gay and bi guys ages 18 to 35. And I think we will soon be starting something up with PeerPride, who are our guests today. So Terry and Kirill, can you please introduce yourselves in whatever order you feel is pertinent?
I can go first because I'm less important, and then like Terry can be like the crown jewel. Well, no, because like this is an event about gender creative caregiving, and I am not a caregiver, but I am interested in being one someday. But yeah, I'm Kirill Stocklow. I use he/him pronouns, and I coordinate programs with PeerPride, which is a 100% trans majority BIPOC organization. Most of us are here in Connecticut. Those of us who are here in Connecticut are part of a Connecticut specific project called Trans Haven, which is the project that hosts our gender creative caregiving support space. We do a lot of different things through Trans Haven. We do support groups, which we're really excited to collaborate with y'all on starting a trans masculine support space in Hartford soon. So that's going to be really exciting. We have support groups, we have advocacy, we have resourcing, and we do a lot of social and arts things as well, which, shameless plug, we have a musicians and songwriters meetup that's 100% trans and gender nonconforming happening in New Haven this Saturday. So anybody who wants to show up, definitely feel free to hit me up. But yeah, I'm really excited to talk about gender creative caregiving. This was actually the first support group that we ever created through Trans Haven, which is ironic because as an all trans organization, this is the only space that we have that cis people are allowed into. So without further ado, I'll just hand it over to Terry to talk about, you know, why they're involved in this and what they do.
Okay, great. So I will say, I'll just yell. I will say that you are a caregiver because you have cared for Rowan. So for my baby, so I'm gonna say that you are a caregiver, just not of your own child. But I'm Terry, and my pronouns are they or she, and I am a gender creative caregiver of my own two children, along with my wife Jordan, who's here but not on video because she's gender creatively caregiving to our baby Rowan. Who is 13 months old and in need of a parent currently. So I help facilitate the monthly support groups for gender creative parents that PeerPride puts on. And that's what I do with this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you both for being here. My second time with PeerPride and in general, and my first time with Terry. Lovely to meet you. So first, I want to know how each of you defines gender creative caregiving.
Yeah, so I'll go first if that's all right. And so for me, gender creative caregiving is really the first rule, I guess, I don't know, is not assigning a gender to your child and letting them tell you who they are. So not assigning a gender from birth and letting your kid tell you who they are. And along with that, not assigning the expectations that go with a certain gender to your baby. And not and remembering that it's creative, so it's not like a gender neutral parenting, because neutral is sounds kind of boring, right? We think like people think like, oh, well, you can only use certain colors, you can only do beige, and you're just gonna have to pick green and yellow, and that's it for the baby. And it's like, no, you actually get more options. It's creative. You can pick from anywhere in the store. There's so many more things. You can it opens up everything for, like grandparents. They can buy from anywhere in the store for your baby. It's great. So that's what, for me, that's like the start for gender creative caregiving, is that not assigning any gender to your baby.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how to follow that, because that pretty much sums it up. I think a lot of people, this comes up a lot of the time in our support spaces and in conversations in general, where people will be like, we're doing this, like we're doing this thing. And I think for me, gender creative caregiving is less doing something and more not doing something completely extraneous. And, the same way that you wouldn't assume, your child's favorite color or your child's profession or, your child's talents or anything like that, then, you shouldn't be assuming what your child's identity is based on what their body looks like. And I guess for me also as an intersex person, it has very specific value because, not assigning somebody a binary gender at birth pushes back against the history of violent gendering that has existed in binaristic Western society for a long time now, and that has impacted intersex infants and intersex adults in very particular ways. So, in addition, I would say to not, assigning social roles to people that are only those people's to claim. I would also go a step further and say, like, you don't want to make assumptions about somebody's identity or their body or how their body works or what their needs are going to be or anything like that based on what their body looks like at birth. So I think that for me, there's also that component too, but I think Terry summed it up pretty perfectly.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, the way the body appears at birth is so very important to people, which you don't really think about until you think about gender creative parenting, right? Like people will be like, oh, did you have a boy or a girl? And it's like, is that really the most important part of what my baby is going to become? But a lot of people, I mean, I guess they just don't know what else to ask. But yeah, so thank you so much for that, your own definitions of the concept. So Terry, how did you decide that gender creative caregiving was the path that your family would take?
So when my wife and I were thinking about getting pregnant, well, about her getting pregnant, we were just kind of thinking about like how we didn't want, we know a lot of trans folks, we know a lot of, I didn't realize I was non-binary at the time. So like through parenting my children this way, I reparented myself and realized my identity. So that's great. Would have been neat if I had known this before, but here we are. And just we were sort of like, yeah, we don't want to like assign this baby a gender, and our older child is agender. And I was like, yeah, I already like guessed wrong with this first child that I have. I assigned that gender, and that wasn't the right one. And so we were sort of, I don't know, I don't remember if it was Jordan or me that heard about Dr. Kyle Myers and their blog Raising Zoomer, and they had a book coming out that was called, I think was called Gender Creative Parenting. I can't remember what their book's called. No, what was it called? What's their book called?
Is it Raising Them?
Raising Them. Yes, that's their book.
But
Raising
that's their blog, I think, maybe. I don't know.
Their blog's Raising Zoomer, and then I think their book is Raising Them. But yeah, we were like, oh, we could do this. Like someone has done it, and like they talk about how they did it in their book, and we're like, oh, we can do this. Okay. Like it doesn't seem like that hard when you're already like planning to bring a person into the world, which is already like kind of a hard thing. And so we're like, oh, we could do this thing where we just don't assign this baby a gender. All right. So yeah, that was kind of how we decided. We're like, it was kind of like, well, already got one wrong and don't want to do that again, and want to let this kid tell us who they are. So that was it.
Okay, so you mentioned that this isn't gender neutral, it's gender creative. Now, how do you incorporate gender creativity into your family's life?
So our baby, like I think I said, Rowan is 13 months. So for a while it was mostly about like clothes, like making all kinds of like variety of clothes for them, because like no,
They're a baby.
Play with a lot of toys, right? They're a baby. But now as they're getting older, it's like, I mean, it's still like clothes, right? Like dressing them in whatever clothes we like, because they don't have a preference yet. And also like all different kinds of toys, right? Like they don't have to only play with dolls, or only play with, I'm trying to think of like what it's like, what is gender, only play with trucks or whatever. Like they can play with literally any toy, because I mean, anyone can play with any toy, but also like it's opening up all the opportunities for them. They get to choose what they like, and we see what they like, and they enjoy musical things and sidewalk chalk, and they get to do that. And we're not like, oh no, that color sidewalk chalk is off limits for you because that's not the color that's in line with your gender. Like they just we get to see what they enjoy and maybe pursue more of that.
That actually reminds me of something somebody my fiance knows. They have a kid, and their kid wanted to dress up as a cloud and a rainbow for Halloween. I guess you could dress up as a cloud and a rainbow. I don't know. And they were like, my kid's a boy, and that's a weirdly girly costume. And I'm like, that's a cloud. Like clouds don't have genders. So like that's kind of the
Really
opposite
weather.
there. And like it's just so bizarre to me. I feel like it'd even be bizarre to somebody who is raising their child as a boy or a girl normally. But just an interesting little tidbit there.
It's just the weather. Like that's just
Yeah,
weather.
But,
yeah.
Fellas, is it gay to clouds?
Is it gay to be the weather?
Is Halloween gay?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's the correct answer.
Yes.
So as your kid gets older and is able to express preferences and stuff, obviously they won't necessarily lean towards feminine or masculine things, but they could. How will you continue to encourage gender creativity?
Well, I mean, I think it's around like age 4 or 5 is when kids do like naturally tell you like what gender they are, or like their pronouns and that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean that they'll only pick like, I mean, they might still prefer they, and also like pink, and also ducks. You know, I don't know. I'm trying to think of things that are like.
Did you say ducks?
Ducks. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Is it gay to like ducks?
Gender right.
Yes.
People gender like the weirdest things,
Yeah.
like with certain animals, or it's like I don't know. It's and just I mean, I just want my kids to like what they like. Like our almost 11-year-old is really into D&D, and
Nice.
like yeah, and like I don't know a lot about it, but they do, and they also really like cats and the Golden Girls and space. Like we just want our kids to have interests that they like, and like costumes. Which sounds normal, but also is like not always the norm for parenting. And so that's what we plan to do for Rowan too. Is just like they tell us what they like, and we will encourage that. Like as they get older, which is
I feel like
Feels like a regular thing.
I feel like folks who are exposed to a lot of gender diversity will tend to like you're saying, like, oh, I feel like this sounds weird that like my kid can like ducks and also pink, because like once you're exposed to that amount of gender diversity, you're just like, is gender creative parenting even like a like weird way to parent? Is what I'm saying make sense? Like,
Yeah, like
it's, to me, it's just like, oh, like clothes, that's just a thing people put on their bodies. But to other people,
yeah,
it's important, it's more important.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carol.
No, you go ahead. You're the parent.
I just really want, like, I mean, I want Rowan to be able to like the things they like, and and to feel confident that whatever that is, that will like back them up no matter what like anyone out in the world says. If someone is like, oh well, you're, like, as they get older, and they're like, and if someone tries to tell them like that they can't wear a certain thing, or that they can't like a certain thing because of whatever reason, like gender, right? That like they'll know, like, oh well, I can, like, that's silly because that doesn't actually, like, this, like, clothes don't have gender, and
Yeah.
colors don't have gender, so like I actually can't, like, I am this gender and I like this thing, so like I can like it. But like I hope that that's what like we're trying to foster, and like that confidence to be like, oh, I can like this because I do like it. So I like, and I kind of feel sad for you that you think that you can't like something just because of some arbitrary assignment that you were given at birth. Like, oh, like, nice gender, did your mom pick it out for you? Like, it's like, I,
I mean,
I don't want my kid
even
to be a bully. I'm just
I mean, even before like people started talking more about gender in recent years, people were still like doing gender creative parenting without calling it that. Like, I mean, growing up, I was like, I mean, that my parents raised me as a girl, like with the pronouns she and her, and were like, can you wear a dress at least to church? But generally, it was like, do whatever you want as long as you're alive, like whatever. And like, it's nice that it's kind of becoming talked about more as a, like an actual parenting technique, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think to add to what Terry's saying also, and I think Kim, you're bringing up like a really important nuance that sets apart like gender creative caregiving from just like being an adequate parent and not like imposing, interests and styles on your child. Because I've talked to a lot of parents who have had young children, and caregivers who have had young children, and they're like, oh, I am practicing gender creative caregiving, or I'm practicing gender creative parenting because I allow my child to dress however they want and play with whatever they want, right? And at the same time, they also assign their kid a gender, and they're bringing their kid into the world and being like, my child is this specific identity that is really only theirs to determine until they tell me otherwise. And what that does is that creates an additional hurdle, because we don't exist in a vacuum, right? Like, we don't exist within the vacuum of our family unit, or even our like chosen social circle, or our close family and friends who might respect whatever. If you are assigning your child a gender at birth, you are sending them out into the world with a label that other people, not you, are going to put expectations on them with, right? So just because, right, somebody's parents say, oh, well, I assigned my kid this gender, but they can do whatever they want. And if they change their mind later, they can tell me later or whatever. They're still setting them up for a lot of really, really messed up stuff in society that they wouldn't be doing had they not made an assumption about their kid based on their body.
Yeah, no,
and so I think
actually,
making that
yeah.
distinction is important.
I hadn't even really thought a lot about that until I met the first people that I met that did gender creative caregiving, like maybe 5 years ago or some, a couple that I know from when I lived out in Albany. I actually had them on for our LGBTQ fertility series, by the way, in case anybody wants to go back and watch that. That's Allison and Valjean, and they are wonderful. But that's a really excellent point, because I wonder if I hadn't been assigned a female at birth, if I would have thought more critically about my gender, or maybe not, I don't know, and would have maybe not identified a different way, or even just like identified different ways at different times in my life. It's really difficult to say. And I mean, I guess I'm fine now, but it is a really interesting thought, and I appreciate you having brought that up.
Yeah. And also, right, like to your point, you know, speaking as a trans person, for kids who do experience body dysphoria, for example, right? And for kids that do, right, strongly have an identity that's different than what's consistent with what people would assume about their bodies at birth, whatever that may be, not assigning your kids something at birth is going to decrease body and social dysphoria, because you're putting the power in your kids' hands. And even if with all of your gender creative caregiving, your child experiences body dysphoria, or your child experiences something where they need some sort of additional gender affirming support, that the pain that comes with that, with both like having to suffer dysphoria and come out to your family or to your caregivers in spite of what you were assigned, that goes away, because your entire upbringing is, you tell us where you fall on stuff and on the spectrum. We're not making any assumptions. Whatever you need, we're going to defer to. And if anybody, you know, needs gender affirming medical treatment at a young age, in order to, you know, to be able to live as authentically and comfortably as possible, it's a lot easier to do that at a younger age. It's a lot less traumatizing for a child. And it, you know, it just creates a much smoother and more mentally stable life for a person. So there's also that component where even if your kid is like, you know, super dysphoric for whatever reason, despite that, you're lending them a lot of support early on.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Now you were talking about kind of like social expectations and stuff. Obviously, even if you aren't putting these types of gender expectations on your child, folks outside of your family unit might, even if you don't assign them a gender based on how they look and stuff like that. So how, in your experience, do you or other folks that you've known respond to pushback that you have received or they have received?
I think that's a Terry question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we haven't gotten a ton of pushback in our family, or like with friends. I don't know. I don't want to like speak about.
It's okay if you want to talk about any of my family. That's fine.
Well, I mean, sure. So there has been some instance with Jordan's grandmother, who has decided what Rowan's gender is without any. She's decided, and has we've had to have like a couple of well, not we, Jordan has had some hard conversations with her to let her know that that she's got to respect what we're doing, or like she can't really be in Rowan, like can't really be with Rowan, like in Rowan's life. And maybe let me know if I'm like misrepresenting anything that's happened. And I think now she pretty much just calls Rowan Rowan instead of using any pronouns at all. But last summer was a little rough when we went to visit, and she just waited until Jordan's mom had left and had left the gathering where we were, and then like proceeded to decide like if and misgender Rowan. And I'm saying misgender because like we don't know Rowan's gender yet, so like it is a misgendering because we don't know. They're like antigen, like pre-gender, so like we don't know their gender yet. So anything feels like a misgendering at this point. And when I think pretty gently corrected her, she was like, "Well, I'm however many years old, and And I like, I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do, basically. And I was like, oh well, okie dokie. But that was uncomfortable. But since then it's been okay, I think.
Good.
Yeah. So other than that, and we did, oh, and there was one other time, actually, because of that, where we thought that Jordan's mom, who has like changed Rowan's diapers and stuff, we thought that Jordan's mom had told Jordan's grandmother like what Rowan's genitals are. And so we like had what we thought was going to be like a really hard conversation with Jordan's mom. And she was like, no, I did not do that at all.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it
How?
was really weird. Yeah. And no, yeah. Actually, until we had gone down there, Jordan's dad like literally had no idea what, and like he saw us change Rowan's diaper in front of him. He literally had no idea like what Rowan's genitals were. Like Jordan's mom like did not tell anyone, was very respectful about our wishes to like not share Rowan's genital information with anyone. Very private, very respectful of that, which is great. Like as not surprising. Like so yeah, Jordan's grandmother just decided for herself what she thinks Rowan is and went with it. So so other than that though, we've not really had like a lot like rough conversations or pushback. Our daycare has been like pretty good. They do, I mean, well, yeah, they do misgender Rowan, and it's been kind of a like we have to remind them regularly to use they, and that I get kind of tired of that, especially because I'm like, well, if you're misgendering my kids, and they don't know I'm non-binary, so I'm like, oh well, like how are you? Like, if sure this would be a fight to like have this conversation about me and my pronouns as like an adult person, so like it, and that's hard, but
yeah, it sounds like it can get kind of exhausting, honestly.
Yeah, it can get exhausting to like regularly remind people to like just even use the right pronouns. That's like
like not even just for yourself, but for your kid as well. Like that's so much.
Yeah, like just it's like just for my kid. Like I just want just use they for my kid. But no one's really, but the pushback has not been like no one is really like arguing regularly about it, which is
I mean, I just don't even think that in my experience, age isn't even really a great excuse, because like I always use the example of my grandmother and her sister. My grandmother is very mad that my cousin, who is a woman, married a woman. Not thrilled. Her sister, who is even older than her, she died when she was like 98. When we told her that Caitlin married a woman, she was like, oh, well, I don't get it, but if they're happy, whatever. So like, I use that example because people are always saying, oh, well, when folks are old, they can just like, they can't learn new stuff. And it's like, that's absolutely not true. They just don't want to. And I mean, obviously if they have like dementia or something, I can't even remember their kid's name. That's a whole other story, but.
Yeah, no, I think that I also really don't like that. It feels like an excuse because there are also people who like, I mean, there are people who are trans who like transition when they're older, like who aren't able to, or who don't like realize, or like for whatever reason, like aren't able to like come out to themselves or come out or like whatever, and then are able to when they're older. And it's like, well, like they're literally changing their lives and who like how they've been known to themselves and their family and friends for like however many years, and like we're just asking you to use a different pronoun. Like age just doesn't really like I mean, you know, like
Totally.
I also want to be like, okay, well, you can't compare one person's journey with another, but also like you can learn how to use someone's you can respect people at any age, I feel like. And
Yeah, or at least make an effort.
yeah, right. Like you don't have to get it right every single time, but also like there is something about seeing people as like full humans that you can maybe do. And then,
All right, so we are getting close to the end of our time, but I just want to ask if you or if either of you have any advice or anything that you would like to give to folks who take care of children to help them affirm gender creativity, regardless of whether it's simply babysitting, like you, Kirill, or having an actual child full time, like you, Terry.
Yeah, I think really just like coming from the perspective of like doing mental health work, right, and peer support just more broadly, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that one of the most impactful things that anybody can do is, instead of being like, I gotta remember these pronouns, I gotta remember to like do these things and like do various exercises. And this applies to like trans people who are, you know, older too. You want to like really change how you think about what assumptions you're making about people. And when we're working with like really young children, right, who have not communicated to us yet what their identity is, the same way that you wouldn't like assume what somebody's name is and be like, all right, you're Bob. You haven't told me your name yet, but you're Bob now, right? Like meeting somebody on the street, like, I don't care, you know, until I know you're Bob. The same way you don't know what somebody's identity is gender wise. So really walking into any caregiving relationship, any caregiving experience that you might have with a young person, kind of with a sense of respect towards them and a sense of curiosity, and being like, I don't know what this person's gender is. They can tell me later. And also like, am I making weird inferences based on their body? Why am I obsessing over an infant's body? Like, why is this a social thing? And really challenging kind of those social standards is a really big deal. I would definitely, you know, encourage anybody to have conversations with their families, have conversations with whomever you can about what different types of gender creative caregiving you can implement into, you know, your day-to-day life. Not everybody has the, you know, not everybody has the privilege or the ability to engage in gender creative caregiving in a way that you'll be fully supported by the people around you. You know, there's families that are very much targeted and are very much policed in ways where, especially right now, gender creative caregiving could endanger a family, depending on where you're located, right? Potentially that's a legitimate fear to have, but there are ways to reduce the harm of assigning a kid a binary gender. And one of the ways of doing that is co-conspiring with your child, or co-conspiring with the child that you're giving care to, even if they're not your child, and being like, hey, FYI, this sucks and this is what society expected me to do. And here are the circumstances that led to this. I don't know what your actual gender is. This was something that like I had to do due to these circumstances. And you can have different varieties of this conversation depending on how old somebody is, right? I don't actually know your gender until you tell me. And like, let's explore together what your identity actually is. Let's explore together what all the different options are and all of that. And I think just not assuming that if you have circumstances where you feel less safe doing fully gender creative caregiving, that somehow that means that you have to like dive deep into gendering children and assuming that you know for them when you actually don't, because that fact doesn't change. Society changes around you, social norms will change around you, but the fact that you don't know somebody's identity until they tell you, and that's anybody regardless of their age, is always going to be true, regardless of where you live or under what conditions or anything like that. So I think that that's the important thing to remember, and just connecting with other people, making sure that children have people of a lot of different genders and gender experiences to connect with and look up to, and really normalize the fact that we don't know. yeah, that's all I got. But I'm, again, not a parent. So Terry.
Still important information to have and important input. I appreciate it. Any last thoughts? Well, that made it sound like I'm going to kill you. I'm sorry. Any last thoughts before the end of this broadcast? I promise I'm not going to kill you.
Last thoughts. So tips for, just want to wrap my head around what I'm last thoughting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I do want to just touch on something that Kirill said, and that is always like in my mind, is how like it is so wild to me how obsessed people are with babies' genitals, and how like yucky that is, and that like it's pretty gross. Um, it's one of the first questions people ask even before a baby is born. And then, and like it's kind of okay. People are like okay with it if you're like, oh, like we don't know like what we're. It's always what we're having, which is like that's weird.
A human, I hope.
A human baby, like generally, and then like, but then once the baby's born, and you're like, oh, like they haven't told us yet. People are like, huh? You're like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you what my baby's privates are, because that's literally not any of your business. And then if you like get kind of, if you say that, sometimes people, it's like sometimes people get it, and then sometimes people are like, oh, and they like ask, I don't know, and you're like, that's literally what you're asking me, is to tell you my like baby's privates, and that's yucky.
Yeah.
So that's, and not, and also that doesn't tell you anything about my baby. Like that doesn't tell you that they're like funny and ugly, and that their favorite movie is Encanto, and that they really like, you know, laughing at the dogs when we take them on a walk. Like that doesn't tell you anything about my baby, like what's in their diaper, like that, you know. And so that is just something that I feel like is so ingrained in people to ask, because it thinks it's good, that people think that it's going to tell them something about this person, but it doesn't actually tell them anything about a person. And so if we maybe separate this idea that, first of all, that genitals and gender are like have anything to do with each other at all, but that like then that has anything to do with who a person is. That maybe
it's all different stuff.
You're right. That's different. And that maybe people, and again, to go back to Kirill's point, that like people can just like believe who people are when they tell you who they are. That like only an individual knows who they are, really. And like that someone can just tell you their identity and you can believe that.
Yeah. Awesome. Anybody wants to contact me, my email address is kim.a@hglhc.org. You can also call the Health Collective at 860-278-4163. My extension is 111. Do you guys just want to really quick say your email address is allowed to for folks who are watching?
Yeah, KIRILL at PeerPride.com. And you can go to PeerPride.com/trans-haven if you're interested in checking out the programs, or if you're interested in our GCC support group. You can just fill out the contact form and check off the Gender Creative Caregiving thingy, and we will email you when we have the next thing. You can also follow us on Facebook. It's just PeerPride, one word. And you will see our monthly events go up there. So,
yeah. All right. And Terry, what's yours?
My email is terri.laue, so it's terri.laue@gmail.com.
All right, and everybody keep an eye on our social media because we will be doing more programming coming up. We're very excited with PeerPride soon at our Hartford office. So keep your eyes out, and there will be news upcoming. Yay! All right. Okay. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.